Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 71. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. If you're new here, my name is Tess Wicks. I am the host, the face, the voice behind Wander Wealthy, and I'm so happy that you are joining us. This is a community for women who are just trying to feel a bit more educated and get a lot more empowered when it comes to making decisions about their money. And today I am bringing you a solo show, something that I do once or twice a month, just to share something that's been coming up for me lately as it revolves around money, personal development, and anything else. So, I'm currently coming to you from the great state of Iowa. Yes, I am back in the US. I'm back in my hometown. I think I was here 2 solo shows ago, and here I am again. It has been a wild 2 months now, almost. It's going to be 2.5 months total of travel, I guess. So it's only been a month and a half, but it has been a wild month and a half of travel so far, and I'm continuing to travel into September and all throughout September. And it's been a wonderful blessing. It's been great. I have had an amazing time exploring these different places and being able to come home. And on that same side of the coin, it has also been stressful, overwhelming, and all of those other things that come with travel that feel like you don't have as much control as you do when you are able to be home and build a routine. And that is just what I'm dealing with. So I always want to paint a very transparent picture of what my life looks like on the other side of, let's say, Instagram, where it just looks like I travel all the time and never work. And on the other side of that picture is me, stressing out and trying to build a business, trying to balance this crazy schedule, and also realizing that I am the only person who put myself in this position. And I'm really proud of that because I love the life that I've been able to build, but I'm also, pissed at myself for booking all these flights and then realizing, I have to go do this now and give up a couple days of work or give up a couple days of other things that I wanted to do originally. And here we are. So that's just I think it's neither good nor bad. That's just life, right? And it's better to be, I don't know. I just want you guys to feel like you understand versus feel like, this person who is someone who I listen to their podcast and follow their Instagram or watch their videos has this perfect life and I need to aspire to be that way. Because at the end of the day, no one's life is perfect. It's just what we choose to put out there is the perfect stuff. And that is not the case 90% of the time. So with that, I wanted to talk today about something that kind of relates to that in a way. And it's all about your narrative. This is going to be a show that dives into the mindset aspect of money, but even more so, more than just money, is your ability to develop personally as a person and be happy and feel fulfilled and all of that. So narrative has been coming up a lot for me because I've been able to surround myself with people who hold on to various narratives that mean different things for them. I don't quite know what narrative I tend to hold on to. I think it's really hard to be your own judge, but I've surrounded myself with some people where one person, as an example, has been someone who has completely turned their life around. They grew up in a strained household, in a situation that was very difficult for them financially. They continued to face financial dilemmas, and yet their life has completely shifted, even in the past year, because of the narrative that they choose to tell themselves about their past versus what their past might have even actually been. But let's get real right now. Your past is only the stories that you choose to tell yourself, and how that impacts you going forward is only dependent on what you choose to hold on to. So if you grew up in a home where finances were difficult and you choose to continue to blame your parents or your siblings or yourself for that situation, then you're even if finances could be easy right now, I can't 100% guarantee because, 99% guarantee that you're still feeling that money is difficult because you're continuing to hold on to that narrative that it was. Now, I think that this can impact us on an even bigger scale, even beyond money. And that is really important because life is much bigger than just your finances. For instance, I also got to spend time in the past couple years with someone who grew up in a very similar situation as the first person I talked about. You know, they grew up in a strained household. Money was not easy for them. They still had a lot of really great things about their childhood, but when they reflect back on that childhood, their childhood, the past, they can only seem to gravitate towards the negative aspects. And part of me wants to go, well, that's understandable. I mean, I can't even be the person who completely judges because I grew up, my own personal upbringing was very privileged. And I will be the first person to tell you that. I have come to terms with that over the years, and I've actually had some shame about that because I feel like no story is worth saying unless it's a come from nothing story. But now I have decided that it's time for me personally to be proud of my upbringing, to be proud of the privilege that I grew up in. And I check it still very, very regularly. And I know that I just even being born in America and being born with the color of my skin has allowed me to be more privileged than other people. And I make sure to always stay in tune with that. Now, with that said, the person that has continued to hold on to this negative narrative also grew up with those same very basic privileges. And yes, they went through a more difficult upbringing. Yet when I look at them and I look at the person that I first started talking about, they both had very similar difficulties growing up. And yet they decide today to tell themselves two very different stories. Now, it's really hard to dive into this, and I don't want to get too specific because I just don't think it's fair to divulge people's information and people's own personal stories. But I think the lesson to be learned here is that you're going to see your life through a lens that you choose to hold on to. And you can choose to view your past as this hard time where you had to fend for yourself and woe is me, let's continue to feel sorry for me as I go forward. Or you can choose to accept your past, and maybe you accept it as, okay, it was kind of shitty. It didn't feel good and life wasn't easy for me. But you know what? I still had some really great things, and here are the great things. I still recognize that I was privileged in these areas, and I don't choose to hold on to this narrative and make it my narrative going forward. I think that if you look at the people around you, and even if you look at yourself, you'll recognize why those people face the situations, face the hardships, or have good luck. You know, there's people who always seem to be getting lucky, and those tend to be the people who view life through a positive narrative. And maybe even if they had a difficult past and a negative story that they used to have, they probably don't hold on to that story anymore, and they choose that their new narrative is going to be one of abundance and one of positivity and optimism. And if you look at the people who continue to just have bad shit happen to them all the time, I guarantee that those are the people who potentially did have a difficult upbringing, or maybe they didn't, and somehow they're choosing to only look at the negative things that happened to them and are making that their story today. They're deciding that, my life was so hard when I was younger. And you know what? I'm just going to choose to continue to make it hard because that is what's comfortable. And I think that's another layer on top of this is we sometimes, even if we're living in this negative narrative, we could change our story if we wanted to. We could change the thoughts that we have about money, about people, about men, about anything. We could choose those thoughts. We could choose new ones that are positive and abundant. But it's really hard to make that change because our brain, our primal brain, the one that was in fight or flight mode when we were, back in the day, hunters and gatherers fending for our lives, that brain is wired to go towards what's comfortable. And if for your entire life, let's say you're in your 20s, for the past 20 years of your life, you didn't have the awareness that you could have control over the choices, the thoughts that you make, and the story that you tell yourself, then what's comfortable for you is what you lived through. And if you lived through a negative situation, then your brain is automatically going to get comfortable with that way of thinking and that experience that you had. So as you go into your future, it's going to be really hard for you to change these stories and change these thoughts that you have to become more abundant and more positive. And even if you want to think that way, you're going to feel resistance because your brain is going to want to go towards what's comfortable. But you have to change the way you think about your life. You have to choose to not be a victim of your past and not be a victim of some of the things that are going to get you down in the future. And you have to choose to think positively about all of the things that you have available to you. Think about what you are privileged with. If you're living in America, you're already privileged compared to people who are living in countries that they are trying to run away from. If you grew up in a town where you got to go to school, you have privilege. If you make an income in your America, if you make minimum wage in America, you are privileged compared to a lot of people. Now, I don't always like to dig into okay, let's compare our privilege and now you can't feel bad for yourself. I think it's okay to dwell for a small period of time. You get broken up with, eat that pint of ice cream, girlfriend. Watch a bunch of movies and cry. But there's a point where you need to pick up and go, okay, I lived through that. That happened. But that is not going to be what I choose to hold on to as I go into new relationships, as I go into a new career, as I go into a new city and make new friendships, as I go into a new opportunity of life. Instead, I'm going to look at the things that I did right, the things that my parents did right, the things that I learned from my past, and I'm going to create my new narrative. I'm going to create my new story. I'm going to develop new positive thoughts, and I'm going to have resistance because I know that's not going to be comfortable, and I know that my primal brain is going to want to go back to the fight or flight mode and take me back to what's comfortable, which is feeling sorry for myself and being the victim, but I'm not going to allow myself to do that this time. And the more you work on that, the more you continue to recognize the resistance you'll have, recognize your brain trying to take you back to comfort, and the more you fight through that, the easier this becomes. So friend number one that I talked about earlier in this episode, that person has practiced this so much. They've become so aware that they are in control of their story and their narrative and the thoughts that they have about money, about career, about men, about all of that stuff, that now they are living a much more higher vibration life. They're living this positively influenced life. And now, I kid you not, they are that person who good stuff just keeps happening to them. And unfortunately, friend number two, who continues to hold on to this negative narrative, continues to attract these negative things into their life because they choose to be a victim, and they continue to tell themselves and tell other people stories where they want to get these people to feel sorry for them. And whether they realize that or not, it's what's happening. And so I just wanted to share this because I think it is so important to first recognize that you are in control of the stories you tell yourself. Even if your past was shitty, you get to choose what you do reflect into your future, and that doesn't have to be the bad stuff. You can develop a life, and I hate to say oh, you can manifest this, but it's true. And it's not just magic wishing and hoping, but it's really choosing to send different positive signals to your brain to align yourself into a position where you can actually set yourself up for quote unquote lucky things to happen to you. It's completely and entirely possible to you. And the biggest thing, and where this kind of relates financially, is I hear it so many times, people say bad stuff just keeps happening. I just keep having emergencies and I can't get out of it. And more often than not, that is a mindset issue. That is an issue where this person continues to believe the negative stories, the scarcity mindset that they may have grown up in or they've somehow grown into. They continue to tell themselves these negative thoughts, and that doesn't get them into positions physically, mentally, emotionally, career-wise, even just making good decisions. It doesn't allow them to get into positions where they can get out of the bad route, the bad journey that continues to make bad things happen, continues to bring up emergencies that they somehow have to now figure out how to pay for. There is a way, if you feel like you keep getting into these situations, there is a way to start reshaping and redesigning the way you think about money. You can just start even by getting educated. I mean, this podcast is like a great first step, is to start getting educated about money, aligning yourself in positions where you can make better decisions. You can make more informed decisions. And with a more positive mindset, you can start taking sometimes even risks that get you into even better decisions. There's often this correlation of success with the amount of risk you're willing to take. So you can find more success if you're more willing to deal with uncertainty and take more risk. And it can be risk that is in the finance world, we say hedged risk, where you're calculating it. You don't just take risk to take risk, but you put yourself out there to be able to maybe bring in more income, or maybe bring in more men if you're trying to date more, whatever it is you're trying to do, where you align yourself with better opportunities. But if you're not willing to deal with the uncertainty, then you're not going to find as much success. And it's much less likely that you are going to align yourself with the opportunities to deal with uncertainty if you are so closed off to these new opportunities because you're scared, because you come from a scarcity mindset, and because you're holding on to this negative narrative where you just believe that bad luck happens to you and you're the victim of it. If instead you choose to be positive and you believe that you are a lucky person, you believe that you are successful, you believe that success is out there for you, you are way more likely to align yourself with opportunities where the success is greater, but you might have a little less certainty on it. But you're more willing to align yourself with that because you come from a much more abundant mindset and you believe that this opportunity could be fulfilled. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. That's something that has been popping up for me recently. I've had experiences with both person 1 and person 2 in recent months, and I think it's fair to open up this discussion so that you can either check yourself and figure out, okay, what stories am I choosing to hold on to? But you can also kind of start feeling out the people that you surround yourself with. And that's the last thing that I'll leave you with is, if you choose to surround yourself with people who continue to hold on to a negative narrative of their life and play victim in their life, that can impact you greatly, significantly, enormously. And you don't have to cut these people out of your lives, because a lot of times these people are family. But what I would do is limit the time you do have with them and have a reset routine where, let's say, your in-laws are just the most negative people and just are victims of their own lives, but you have to spend time with them because they're your in-laws. But maybe when you get home from visiting your in-laws, you have a reset routine where you get yourself back into a positive mindset and you figure out what are those things you're going to do to reset yourself, find your new center, and go from there. Because it is not healthy and it is very toxic to be around people who continue to play into that negative narrative of their life. So find your new center, get back to 0, and go up instead of starting from -50, which is where people can sometimes take us. So with that, I hope that that helps. I hope that brings you some new insight into what's happening in your life. And I will leave you there. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I hope you wander wealthy.